Just to give you an idea of just how live and uncut and ongoing this project is, I've actually made changes to 2 of the statutes that I'm about to talk about in this video since I recorded the voiceover. And to give you a clue, it is in the second set of laws that we're going to talk about, and it's number 8 and number 11. And you can follow along at the Oera wiki. I've put the link in the notes below. So give it a try, see if you can figure out what words that I have changed. I'm not doing this as a contest. I'm doing it because I realized changes needed to be made while I was making the video. And yeah, that's the nature of the project. We're almost finished with these little changes, but as you go through and look more closely at things, you start to realize when you actually speak them into a video, then sometimes just things click, and that's what happened this time. So see if you can figure out what's going on, and now on with the video. I'd like to start by saying thank you for visiting my channel. This will be the 6th video in my series on the laws of Codex Oera. So far, we've covered Freya's Tes, which is the constitutional document of the Freya people, written by the stammutter of the Freya folk, Freya herself, which she presented to her children at Vlieland before being swallowed by the sea. We have also looked at the Burg laws, which govern the offices of government, their rights and obligations, as well as the common laws setting forth the basic rules of community life, including family homesteads and the open markets. Today I will introduce a package of 3 legal codices that together form a framework to regulate the important matter of homeland defense. Beginning on manuscript page 21.15, we read, "In earlier times, Finda's folk mostly lived together in their mother's native land called Atland, which now lies under the sea. They were thus far away, so we had no wars." Here we have a mention of Atland, which is also called Atland, and not much is written about this place in the manuscript, except that it was swallowed up by the sea and that it was the ancestral home of the people of Finda, another of the 3 mothers of all humankind, Freya, Finda, and Lyda. The sinking of Atlant was a cataclysm of such sweeping scope that it affected all the lands down to Egypt and even beyond. This is probably why it serves as the reference point for the counting of years by the Freya, much as we now use the birth of Christ as the epochal starting point. Atlant is of course also a cognate of Atlantis, as later recounted by Plato, but that is beyond the scope of this video. Returning to the reading, with which you can follow along via the Oera wiki using the link in the notes. When they became displaced and moved into Rabas, it naturally led to defense, armies, kings, and wars. Rules were established for all these things, and from these rules came laws. Here follow the laws brought forth thereof. 1. Every Freya must ward off attackers or enemies with all such weapons as he can invent, procure, and use. 2. When a boy reaches the age of 12 years, he must devote every 7th day of his schooling to learning how to use weapons. 3. Once he is skilled, he is to be given weapons and dubbed a defender. Note that the term defender is used here rather than, for instance, warrior. War and fighting were always viewed from a defensive posture in the writings we have about the Freya, an unfortunate necessity to ensure freedom, the highest ideal in their culture. The Freya's word for soldier, saltata, the root word here being salt, is reserved for the mercenaries employed by various rulers and warlords against the Freya, and means something like allies in exchange for salt. Moving on. 4. When he has been a defender for 3 years, he becomes a lord and may help elect his captains. 5. When he has been an elector for 7 years, he may help elect an army leader or king, as well as be chosen himself. 6. Every 3 years, new elections must be held. Here we learn more about the democratic processes of the Freya, namely that the right to vote is earned through community service. literally requiring skin in the game to become a lord, which is a term we were introduced to in the video about the Burg laws. The Freie word here is Bürger, from which the modern German word Bürger, or citizen, is derived. Notice, too, that an additional period of experience as a full-fledged citizen or lord was required before one was eligible to vote for higher offices or himself hold office. I say himself here because it seems that, given that there was a requirement to be a defender, only men would have been able to become Bürger, despite the matriarchal structure of Freie society. 3 more laws about the democratic process. 7. Except for the king, all officials may be re-elected if they have acted righteously and in accordance with Freie's counsels. 8. A king may not remain king for longer than 3 years, in order that he may not become entrenched to the detriment of our freedom. 9. After 7 years of retirement, he may be chosen again. There was a push to disregard the limits on kingship set forth here, and this will become an important avenue later for the undermining of traditional Freie morality when hereditary kingship and the divine right of kings eventually began to take hold. The laws designed to prevent this had been in force, as we know, for a very long time prior to their being written down in the Book of Adela followers, which makes up the first half of the Urlinde manuscript and is where the laws are contained. By the time they were copied from the Burg walls around 500 BCE, the moral decline had already set in. The final 3 defense laws further define the limits on kingship and the rules of succession. 10. If the king is killed by the enemy, his next of kin may vie for the honor. 11. If he retires normally or dies within his term of service, he may not be succeeded by a relative nearer than the 4th degree. 12. Those who fight with weapons in their hands cannot reflect and judge wisely. Therefore, it does not befit a king to wield weapons in battle. His wisdom must be his weapon, and the love of his champions his shield. So that was the first set of laws. The next set is designed for times in which war was unavoidable. Page 23.07 begins. These are the laws governing actions of the mother and the king. 1. If war breaks out, the mother sends her messengers to the king, who sends messengers to the reeves to mobilize the militia. 2. The reeves convene all lords and determine how many men they should send. 3. All of their resolutions must immediately be sent to the mother with messengers and witnesses. Here we get a glimpse into the decentralized nature of government across Freies Land. Notice that it's the mother who informs the king of the need to mobilize, as it is she who has the broadest network of intelligence, via the burghs, which form the central pillar of authority in every region and whose setup we discussed in the Burg Laws video. The men, in the persons of the king, the reeves, and the lords, are in charge of mustering the troops. But as we'll see next, it is the mother who has the final say, and she maintains overall control of the army throughout the conflict. 4. The mother has all resolutions gathered and announces the golden number, which is the median of all resolutions together. At this point, the lords must defer to her decision, as must the king. 5. When the army is afield, the king needs consult only his captains, but there must always be 3 burg lords of the mother present, sitting in front, with no vote in the matter. These lords must send messengers to the mother daily, so that she will know if anything is done that is in conflict with the laws or with Freia's counsels. 6. If the king wishes to do anything which his captains oppose, he may not persist in it. Though the mother holds ultimate authority, she gives her commanders the necessary leeway to act in the best interest of their companies and of the war effort. But their actions are subject to a council of captains, and they are closely observed and reported to the mother by her representatives at the front. However, there are certain cases in which the freedom to act on the battlefield is less constrained, as follows. 7. Should the enemy come at unawares, the king shall have sole command. 8. If the king is not available, his next in command must be obeyed, and so on in order of succession. 9. If there is no captain, one must be chosen. 10. If there is no time, he shall step forward as captain who feels capable to lead. In these final two laws, certain rights are granted to successful kings, and these are accompanied, as is nearly always the case with Freie law-giving, by corresponding restrictions. 11. If a king has beat back a fearsome foe, his descendants may use his name after their own. If he so wishes, the king may choose a place on an uncultivated site for his house and yard. That yard may consist of a surrounding field so large that he can walk 700 steps from all sides of his house before he reaches its boundaries. 12. His youngest son may inherit this estate, and that son's youngest after him. Then the community shall take it back. Before moving on to the third and final set of laws, those designed to ensure security and regulate veterans' affairs, it would be good to have a look at the writings of the wise sea king Minno and see what he has to say about preventing the outbreak of war in the first place. From Minno's writings: if anyone is so wicked as to steal from our neighboring peoples, commit murderous deeds, burn houses, defile girls, or commit any other deed that is wicked, and our neighbors wish to have it avenged, then it is right to arrest the culprit and execute him in their presence, to prevent it leading to a war in which the innocent would pay the price for the guilty. If they wish to spare his life and allow him to purchase clemency, that may be tolerated, though if the culprit was a king, a reeve, an alderman, or anyone else charged with upholding morality, we must make good for the evil. But the culprit must have his punishment. If he bears an honorable name from his ancestors on his shield, his kinsmen shall no longer have the right to bear the name, in order that families will feel responsible for one another's conduct. This is not itself a law, but it does reflect the principles on which the laws are founded, and it gives us insight into the gravity afforded to what the Freie people considered proper conduct, especially towards their neighbors. Back to the laws. This last set of 7 statutes further highlights the importance of community and goodwill even in the aftermath of war. Beginning on manuscript page 25.04, here are the rights of all Freias to ensure their security. 1. When laws are made or new rules established, this must be done for the common good, and never for the benefit of individuals, nor for that of individual families, towns, or anything else that is individual. 2. If war breaks out and houses are destroyed, or ships, or whatever else, whether by the enemy or for the general cause, then the community, that is all the folk together, must repair them again. This is so that no one shall contribute to the failure of the common cause in order to save his own estate. Next, the section addresses the human toll of conflict. 3. When war has passed, and there are some so injured that they can no longer work, then the community must see to their care. At feasts they must sit in the front, so that the youth may honor them. 4. Widows and orphans of war must also be cared for, and the sons may write the names of their fathers on their shields for the honor of their families. In the final 3 laws, attention is given to the treatment of prisoners, both returnees from the enemy and those taken as prisoners by the defense. 5. If anyone has been captured by the enemy and they come back, they must be taken far away from the encampment, as they may have been set free in exchange for grim promises. This way they may avoid keeping their promises and yet remain truthful. 6. If we ourselves capture enemies, they are to be brought deep into the lands and educated about our Freie morals. 7. If they are afterwards set free, it must be done with kindness by the maidens, in order that we make allies and friends of adversaries and enemies. Apart from being surprisingly thorough in the matters it regulates, I think this framework demonstrates a lot about the Freie worldview. And along with the laws that I've introduced so far in this series on the laws of Codex Orlinda, it sets the stage for understanding the tragic demise of the unique ideal it represents. Looking ahead, there is one more set of laws to be presented, the laws for navigators. This is perhaps the most important class of people in the Freie world, as they were the ones who set out to sea for trade and exploration. And then there are some legal precedents to discuss before the series comes to an end. We've already learned about the principle of Oera in another short video in the series, and there are a few more principles of law and justice to explore. So join me for the concluding chapters as we round out our understanding of the Freie moral codes that underlie the narratives of Codex Oralinde.